Welcome back, students, to part 2. Just a quick flip onto the next slide. This is where we pretty much ended, not exactly with this slide, but with this situation, which shows perfect competition and firms making economic profit. How do we know this? Well, let's quickly do a refresh on what we learned. Here is our market, our perfectly competitive market, where the equilibrium position is determined through market forces, which is the interaction of demand and supply, or if we want to be personable, producers and consumers. That establishes the equilibrium price, which then tells us where to draw the demand curve for the firm. So once we know that P1 is the price, then we draw a straight line at that price, and that becomes our AR is equal to MR is equal to the demand curve. Average revenue is equal to marginal revenue, and that is our demand curve for our firm. The next trick was to identify equilibrium, which was where MR was equal to MC. That gave us our quantity that our firm will produce. And then we had to decide what sort of profit are we making. And we've decided in this particular case that this is economic profit. So there's my AC curve, and that shows me that my average cost is less than my average revenue, which according to our profit rules tells us that we are making economic profit or excess profit or abnormal or supernormal profit, whatever they decide we want to call it. All right. It's profit on top of profit, bottom line. All right. So now our firms are all making economic profits. In the short run, what will happen in the long run? Now we have to go back to our understanding of the different characteristics of our market structure. Perfect competition has no barriers to entry. Anybody or any new firms can enter this market, which is what they will do when they find out that there is economic profit to be made. So new firms enter the market, and that would cause that supply curve to shift to the right. As we shift our supply curve to the right, we will find that our equilibrium position will change, our equilibrium price will drop, and this will continue until all our firms are making normal profit in the long run. Let's go and look at that situation. There you have it. So I've adjusted the diagram to show there's my supply curve shifting to the right, showing an increase in the number of firms in the industry. Our new equilibrium price accepted by all the price takers, that is, all firms that operate in this industry. There is our new demand curve, and our situation for the firm still in equilibrium, but now only making normal profit. Ladies and gents, when the firms are making economic profit or they are making economic loss in the short run, the firm is in equilibrium, but the industry is not. In the long run, however, the industry and the firm will be in equilibrium, and this will only occur when all firms are making normal profits. A little tricky for some, but very interesting in my opinion, and just make sure that you get to grips with it. They could ask you this question in that final exam, all right? Good luck with studying that. Now we're going to move on to our next market structure. Monopoly. Now, you've got to look at your theory and your graphs for monopoly. Your monopoly is a fairly easy one. There's only a single supplier. It's a unique product. There are barriers to entry. In fact, entry into the market is blocked. Now, the question is, what does the graph look like? There we go. But now we've got to get to equilibrium too. So we want the profit maximizing or the equilibrium or the output decision of our monopolist. Once again, you start with your demand curves. That's what I taught you when we were drawing the graph for perfect competition. Always start with your demand curve. There comes our demand curve. P equals AR. That is your demand curve. All right. So if you're confused as to which one is your demand curve, make a big NB for yourself. AR is always the demand curve. All right. MR, in the case of the monopolist, will always be below the AR curve. Please make sure you know why. Take a look at your notes, your slides, your textbook, and make sure that you can tell or explain why the MR is below the AR curve. Next trick is we want to get to equilibrium. What do we need? We need our MC curve. So we pull in our MC curve. Looks a bit like a tick. Make sure that's how you do it. And then we identify where is MR equal to MC. We get ourselves our equilibrium position. We identify our quantity. And from our price line or our average revenue line or our demand curve, we identify our price. Ladies and gents, please make sure you know how to do this. This is a tricky thing. Students tend to forget when they have to draw the graph in the exams. Make sure you've drawn it before without looking at the graph before you go into that exam. All right. So now our firm is in equilibrium. But once again, we don't know how much profit they're making. Now, if we want to show a firm making economic profit, we already know that we must show a situation where average revenue is greater than average cost. All right, let's do that. There we go. My average revenue, my price, is greater than my average cost. And now we can see that we are making economic profit. Now, here's the interesting thing for the monopoly. This is possible in the short run and in the long run. Remember, there are no other competitors in this industry. Nobody can enter. The entry into this market is blocked. Therefore, if you are happily, as a monopoly, making economic profits, nobody can come and take them away from you. So you can continue to make those profits in the short run and in the long run. All right, so that is how it is different from perfect competition. Other differences too, make sure you look at that table, but that is a really important difference. Also notice that your price is above your MC. There's your MC, your marginal cost, and there is your price. Another very, very important difference. All right, now we're going to go into a bit of theory on the monopolist. Some important information. You must know what we mean by price discrimination. Make sure you can describe that. Price discrimination means we're going to charge different customers different prices for the same product. All right, so make sure you can describe price discrimination. Make sure you can tell us when it exists, and it does depend on the buyer's valuation of the same product. And a very important reason for price discrimination is to capture consumer surplus. Take a look at each of those points and make sure that you are comfortable with them before you go into that final exam. There are three types of price discrimination that you need to take a look at. There are many different types of price discrimination. Many of them can be forced into one of these three types, but we only expect you to know these three. All right, so given that we could expect you to learn a whole lot more, we are expecting you only to know a very little bit on price discrimination. So your first degree price discrimination, perfect price discrimination. Each consumer is charged the maximum price he or she is prepared to pay. Think of flea markets where you negotiate a price. That's your first degree price discrimination. Second degree price discrimination, consumers pay different prices for different quantities. You should be familiar with that. We see this in stores all the time. And then the last one, third degree price discrimination. Consumers are grouped into one or more independent groups. For example, Eskom. Businesses pay different rates to households. And then you've also got your airlines. You've got economy. You've got business class. You've got first class. All different in terms of the same thing you're really getting in terms of a flight from A to B. In the case of flying, you may say, yeah, but first class you get a different service. Yeah, you do, but you're still in the aeroplane flying from one place to the other. All right, so I think of it carefully and hopefully you'll get some clarity on it. All right. A tricky concept we're about to have a look at now, which is called a natural monopoly. Now, one of the questions that they have asked before is explain with the aid of a diagram what is meant by a natural monopoly and give examples of a natural monopoly in the South African economy. Well, there's a key difference for a natural monopoly. Now, I'm going to show you what this key difference is, and then we'll talk some more about it. Look at how your demand and your AR and your MR curve still the same. Look exactly as they did in the previous graph we drew, but look at your cost curves. Your MC curve and your AC curve, much flatter. Absolutely critical, ladies and gents, when you're looking at natural monopoly. This is because of economies of scale. We're going to have a look at that in a moment or two again. Once again, your monopolist will operate if he or she is left to his own devices, where MR is equal to MC, which would give the price and then the quantity. Make sure you would be able to identify where your price and quantity are on this graph. Description of a natural monopoly: the most cost efficient for a single firm to produce all the output in an industry or market. So what is a natural monopoly? Make sure you can tell me. Make sure you can explain why your MC and AC curves are so much flatter. And that is because of economies of scale. I'll talk about that a little bit in part 3 again. And then explain the problem that a natural monopoly creates for government. Well, here we have it. They create a dilemma for the government, because what the private firm will do, the private monopoly, if they're a natural monopoly, they're only producer of a particular product in the entire country, for example, they would produce at inefficient levels and they would earn excessive profits, because that's what a rational firm would do. We'll take a look at that in a moment or two again. And then there are 4 strategies that government could follow to deal with this problem. And one of these is the regulation of prices. This is called pricing strategy, and that is where I'll pick it up in part 3.